and welcome to the Art of Being Human. You know, we've been dealing with chronic diseases because chronic diseases affect the way you think, the way you act, your personality, and so much about you. And it was suggested to me, and it's a really good suggestion, that I do a segment on Lyme disease because it is prevalent. Now, it's not a chronic disease in the sense that you were born with it, it has a genetic component or anything like that. It comes from the bite of a tick. But it can be devastating, and so I want to get into it. So we will be discussing Lyme disease. It's very serious. Now, when I was on staff at the university, one of the universities I was at, there was a woman who came to me, and she was in a panic. And she says, I just went out in the woods to take a walk, and I've been bitten by a tick. I'm afraid I might possibly get Lyme disease. And she was really stressed about it. And I understood why, because it does so many devastating things. But at the time that she told me that, I was not so aware as how bad it could be. I thought, well, if she does have it, and it doesn't get treated very well, then she'll have some arthritic symptoms, her bones will hurt, her joints would be quite right. And I just thought, you know, it'll be a joint problem, a muscle problem, and I didn't give it much more thought than that. But Lyme disease can do a lot more than that. And I know that I was concerned when my niece used to take her dog out and walk her dog in woods which were behind her house, and when she came back from the walk, she used to go through her dog who had heavy fur, just inch by inch to make sure she got ticks out, and she would find them, and she would also find them on herself. And I have a nephew who's taking care of a dog who he dearly loves, and that dog is going blind because the dog has Lyme's disease. And so you don't think of it sometimes. You know, you get bit by an insect, and there may be some things wrong with you as a result of that, but this is an illness that lasts for years and years and years. So I want to go over the process of what happens to you when you have Lyme disease. So if you get sick from Lyme's disease, the process is this. Let me just go over this. Lyme disease is transmitted by ticks, and bacteria enters the skin at the site of where the bite is. And after 3 to 32 days, I mean, it's about a month's time, you'll get your first real symptom, and it will be a large red spot, usually on your legs or on your torso somewhere. Now, 6 inches, that spot can grow to be 6 inches wide, and it's a red spot. Now, some people get smaller spots as well, but it's significant that this one big red spot reaches a size of 6 inches in diameter. So I brought a ruler with me. How wide really is 6 inches? Well, if you look at this, from my finger right here, to my finger right here, that's 6 inches wide. Can you imagine having a spot that's 6 inches wide? But you can, and that's one of the first real symptoms. If I open my hands, I can open my hands from my pinky finger to my thumb for about 6 inches, actually a little bit wider than 6 inches. But that's what it is, a really, really large red spot. Now, this spot gets to be 6 inches, and you're going to have some symptoms at the same time. Your symptoms are going to be fatigue, chills, fever, headache, stiff neck, muscle and joint aches. And then after that, you'll have the following symptoms: nausea, vomiting, sore throat, swollen lymph nodes, enlarged spleen, and this may last for absolutely weeks. So you have all of those symptoms lasting for weeks. Now, that is not good. And then several weeks or months later, this illness continues. It doesn't stop. 15% people will have nerve functions difficulties. The nerves will not be working right, lasting for months. And we say months, several months. How many months? Well, 6, 7, 8 months. It doesn't say. I haven't been able to pick up a specific, but those symptoms can be for months. And then the tissues around the brain are infected. And that would be the meninges surrounding the brain. And with that, you get a stiff neck, headaches, facial weakness. Now, that's also called palsy. Heart trouble. Arthritis develops after that. And then you have pain in the large joints of the body, especially the knees. And this can last for several years. So a tick bite is something really to be concerned about. You start off with a spot, which you may not get until a month after you've been bitten, and then it progresses. Every few months, another symptom. Every few years, another symptom. And you are treated for it with antibiotics. Lyme's disease is treated with antibiotics. Some people become very, very disabled with it. You know, it's very easy to get an illness without even thinking about it. I had, a couple of summers ago, I developed a very odd rash, and it was a big rash, and it was halfway all over my body, and I was feeling miserable, and I went to the emergency room. And I says, look at this rash. When they finally came in, they said, oh, that's simple. You've got poison ivy. And I says, how can I get poison ivy? I don't walk in the woods. And they said, well, we've had several cases recently of poison ivy, and what we figured out what possibly happened is, even though I don't walk in the woods, and the other patients that had it were saying the same thing, how could I get it? I don't walk in the woods. But if a person walks their pet in the woods, a friend of mine took her dog out, walked her in the woods, and of course this is a favorite pastime of the dog. And while there, the dog brushed up against the poison ivy plants. Nobody would have known it. They didn't pay any attention to it. How can you walk in the woods without brushing up against something? So it was no big deal. And they brought her back, and I love dogs. I love all animals, and I saw them, and of course, what am I doing? I'm patting the dog. Unfortunately, I'm patting the dog at the exact spot that she rubbed up against the poison ivy. A day or two later, I've got a massive case of poison ivy. And so they treated me for the poison ivy, but that's how I got it. So it doesn't take much. If you have a tick, I mean, the tick is minuscule, it's very small, but if you see a tick, don't smash it up against your body and then flick it off. Take a tissue and pull it out, because it's going to burrow into your skin. And then that's where bacteria are going to enter, and that's where you're going to start having the problems of Lyme disease. You pull it out, then you destroy the tick. But after you go walking in the woods, you need to check yourself all over, or have somebody check you all over to make sure that you don't have a tick on you somewhere. And also for your pets, if you go walking in the woods, or if there are any woods nearby, check your pet, because a lot of pets have thick fur, and you have to really kind of comb through the fur to make sure that there's not a tick hiding in the fur somewhere, because this illness can be terrible. It can be very debilitating, and that's why I was glad when somebody suggested that I do it. And years ago, I didn't think anything of it. So you get a little bones ache, or your muscles hurt a little. That's not such a big deal. Of course it is if you're an athlete, and she was, but there's so much more to it than that. And so with the antibiotics that you're treated with, hopefully you can defer the symptoms and not go through all of that. But that's Lyme's disease. You need to take precautions. If you go out, just take precautions and be careful. Now I want to get to something else. I'm going to go into muscular dystrophy, because it's one of the chronic illnesses that I did not have a chance to cover when I was doing a lot. I mean, I've done the myasthenia gravis and a lot of illnesses like that, but I was aware of the fact that I didn't go into muscular dystrophy. So I'm just going to spend a little time with that, and then going into sleep disorders. Muscular dystrophy, there are several types of it, and it's genetic genetically based. In other words, something happened, you're carrying it in your genes, and it's a very devastating illness. There are several types of it, as I said before. It's inherited, and what it leads to is muscle weakness. Now, you have genetic problems. It may not show up until a person is young adult or teenagerhood. It isn't anything that may show up early, but it can. There are certain forms of it that can show up early, but a lot of people don't even know they have a problem with it until they're teenagers. Now, one type of muscular dystrophy, there are two special types of muscular dystrophy, is Duchenne's muscular dystrophy and Becker's muscular dystrophy. Now, there are other types as well, but these are the two major ones we're going into, and it's due to a genetic defect. And usually, I want to say girls don't get it, because girls have two X chromosomes. If one is damaged and one has a condition, the other is healthy and can cover for it, so you don't actually get symptoms. Boys have XY, and if the X is damaged or the Y is damaged, there's not one like it to cover for it, so they tend to get the symptoms. So this is more a boy's illness rather than a girl's illness. Now, Duchenne's, I'm going to show a picture of a boy here. I took this from a magazine, and I hope we'll be able to see it all right. I think we can. Take a look at the little boy in the middle. He's about 13 to 15 years old, and he has Duchenne's. And he's like every other boy, but he has real severe muscle problems. I'm going to put this over here just for now. We may take a look at that again later. In Duchenne's, you don't have the protein, or the protein is damaged that holds the muscle structure and cell structure together. In other words, there's damage there. There's a lack of a protein that maintains the structure of muscles. And when that happens, the child will grow muscles, but the muscles are ineffective. They can't be used. They're weak. They're not strong. And the other one is Becker's muscular dystrophy. And with Becker's, you have the protein that you need, but the problem is it's too large. The molecule is too large and it's not used effectively, so you get the same result, muscle weakness. So you would have to say that what muscular dystrophy is, it has to do with muscle weakness, not being able to move your muscles right, and it means also that if a child does walk, he walks late. And if he walks late, he'll probably lose the ability to walk by the time he's 13 to 15 years old, because the muscles don't have the protein that's necessary to keep them functioning. And for Duchenne's, they don't have it. For Becker's, they have it and it's the wrong size and can't be used. So there are times when you can have something, but you can't use it. You know, in diabetes, you can have insulin, but the body can't use it. So it's may as well not have it as to have it and not be able to use it. But those are the two differences. It is a genetic defect, and boys who have it, they just can't walk after a certain age. Now, this little boy here, I just want to mention him, so I want to get him in the picture again if possible, or I can move it so we can get it. He looks like there might be something wrong. I don't know if you can see that well enough. Maybe I should just pick it up and hold it. That might be easier. You might get a bit bigger picture. He looks like there might be something wrong. He doesn't look that unusual. He looks like a preteen or a teenager. But with him, they noticed that at age 2, he couldn't talk much. Now, children at age 2 don't talk a lot anyway. There's a lot of babble in their talk, but he wasn't talking hardly at all. He was very late in walking. Now, in this article, I guess he's at age 15, and he has poor balance. He can't walk much, and it's because of muscle deterioration. Most of these children die by the time they're in their 20s. This is a fatal disease. Muscular dystrophy can be a fatal disease, and most of the children will live until their 20s, and somewhere in their 20s they pass away. And they lose their ability to walk, if they ever walked to begin with. And so this article was about a family when they discovered, the parents were professional people, and when they discovered that he had this illness and what it was going to be like, they started a research center to get information and hopefully a cure for the illness, and that's what came out of it. And as far as I know, he's still alive. I don't know anything more than I did. So this is muscular dystrophy, a fatal disease and genetic. Now, the chronic illnesses that I've been working with are basically due to something being wrong with the physiology of the body. But the thing is, usually it's not necessarily fatal. But this disease is fatal, and it is genetic in origin. Now what I'm going to do is go on to sleeping disorders, and I'm not going to do too much of it because we don't have too much time left, but let me get it started anyway. The purpose of sleep is to restore us. And some need more than 6 hours a day, and some need less than 9 hours a day. I myself sleep about 5 hours, that's it, and I'm fine. Now, those who require less sleep are usually efficient and ambitious and content, and they're socially healthy. Those who require more sleep are usually depressed and anxious and withdrawn. Now, I don't know as I trust this. This is what I read in the textbooks, but I don't know as I trust it completely, because I know of an attorney, a successful attorney, who had to sleep 11 hours a day. His body required it for him to function. And as long as he slept that 11 hours a day, he was fine. So there are exceptions, of course, to every rule. So what we're talking about is basically the rule of thumb. I heard of a person who could go 4 days normally, and then on the 5th day, it was like a sleep cycle she had. She had to sleep almost all day. And then she was fine for another 4 days, using just sleeping normally and with normal activity. And on the 5th day, she just felt really out of sorts, and she had to sleep for most of the day. This was the cycle of her life. This is what her body demanded. And I can remember also, and then I'll close on this because we are getting out of time. I can remember reading science reports when I was younger. I always loved science. And they were going to try to discover a way where they could just eliminate sleep, so we could be up and about and working or whatever we wanted to do 24 hours a day, and we could be able to survive without sleep. What would you do for the extra 6 or 7 hours? Well, of course, that was stupid. We have to have sleep. This is how we repair our bodies. It's in terms of the sleep that we get. Also, we become creative. We get our new ideas because our brain kind of works on it while we're sleeping. And to go without sleep is foolish. If you need to sleep, you need to sleep. Your body requires it. It requires it for your health. It requires it for your mental state, because you sort out a lot of the emotions that you have. A lot of the things that are going on with you mentally are taken care of as you sleep. Your brain is very active in your sleep. You may not think so, your muscles aren't moving much and all of that, but you're still very, very active. Your brain is working on things in your sleep. So your brain really doesn't get a whole lot of rest. It gets some, but it's different. It's working on different things. So we can't go without sleep. So if you need a lot of sleep, have a lot of sleep. If you can get by without it, then that's okay. One is not necessarily better than the other. It's just a case of how your body is functioning. So I'm going to close it here. We're going to begin again on sleep the next time, and we'll do a whole segment on it. So we'll close for now. Please join me next time.